Charlie and I, to my memory, in 53 years, I don't think we've ever had a discussion about buying a stock or a business or selling a stock or a business that has been where we've talked about macro affairs. I mean, if we find a business that we think we understand and we like the price at which it's being offered, we buy it. And it doesn't make any difference what the headlines are. It doesn't make any difference what the Federal Reserve is doing. It doesn't make any difference what's going on in Europe. We buy it. You know, there's always going to be good and bad news out there, and which gets emphasized the most depends on the moods of people or newspaper editors or whomever. And there's a ton of bad. I bought my first stock, in June of '42, and what had happened, we were losing the war, until the Battle of Midway. I mean, so here was a country that all my older friends had gone, were disappeared. We weren't going to make any kinds of goods that people wanted. We were going to build battleships and things to drop in the sea, and we were losing, But stocks were cheap, and I wrote that article in October of 2008 in the Times that I should have written a few months later, but in the end I said we've just had a financial panic and it's going to flow over into the economy, and you're going to read all kinds of bad news, but so what? America's not going to go away, and stocks are cheap. We look to value, and we don't look to headlines at all, and we really don't. Everybody thinks that we sit around and talk about macro factors. We don't have any discussions about macro factors. Charlie?
Yeah, but we did keep liquid reserves at the bottom of the panic that if we'd known it was not going to get any worse, we would have spent. But because we didn't know that.
Yeah, we know what we don't know, and we know we don't want to go broke. I mean, we start with that, and we know you can't go broke if you got a fair amount of liquid reserves around and you don't have any near-term debts and so on. So, our first rule is always to play tomorrow, no matter what happens.
I know, Mr. Buffett, that you've said that you don't read what other people say about the market or the economy, but do either you or Charlie have an opinion about how you think things are going to go? Are you bullish or bearish?
You may have trouble believing this, but Charlie and I never have an opinion about the market because it wouldn't be any good, and it might interfere with the opinions we have that are good. If we're right about a business, if we think a business is attractive, it would be very foolish for us to not take action on that because we thought something about what the market was going to do or anything of that sort, because we just don't know, and to give up something that you do know and that is profitable for something that you don't know and won't know because of that, it just doesn't make any sense to us, and it doesn't really make any difference to us. I mean, to give up what you're doing well because of guesses about what's going to happen in some macro way just doesn't make any sense to us. The best thing that can happen from Berkshire's standpoint, we don't wish this on anybody, but over time, is to have markets that go down a tremendous amount. I mean, we are going to be buyers of things over time. Now, if you're going to be buyers of groceries over time, you like grocery prices to go down. If you're going to be buying cars over time, you like car prices to go down. We buy businesses. We buy pieces of businesses, stocks. And we're going to be much better off if we can buy those things at an attractive price than if we can't. So we don't have any fear at all. I mean, what we fear is an irrational bull market that's sustained for some long period of time. You, as shareholders of Berkshire, unless you own your shares on borrowed money or are going to sell them in a very short period of time, are better off if stocks get cheaper, because it means that we can be doing more intelligent things on your behalf than would be the case otherwise. But we have no idea what and we wouldn't care what anybody thought about it. I mean, most of all ourselves. I mean, Charlie, do you have any?
No, I think if you're agnostic about those macro factors and therefore devote all your time to thinking about the individual businesses and the individual opportunities. It's a way more efficient way to behave, at least with our particular talents and lacks thereof.
If you write about the businesses, you'll end up doing fine. We don't know, and we don't think about when something will happen. We think about what will happen. It's not so difficult to figure out what will happen. It's impossible in our view to figure out when it will happen. So we focus on what will happen. This company in 1890 or thereabouts, the whole company sold for $2,000. It's got a market value now of about 50-odd billion. You know. Somebody could have said to the fellow who was buying this in 1890, you know, you're going to have a couple of great world wars, and you know, you'll have the panic of 1907. All these things will happen. And wouldn't it be a better idea to wait? You know? We can't afford that mistake, basically.
Charlie and I are certainly, we read a lot, and we're interested in economic matters and political matters for that matter, and so we know a lot, or we're familiar a lot, I should say, with almost all the macroeconomic factors. That doesn't mean we know where they're going to lead. We don't know where zero interest rates are going to lead, but we do know what's going on if we don't know what is likely to...
Warren, there's a confusion here.
Oh.
It says microeconomic factors.
Oh, micro.
We pay a lot of attention to those.
Oh, yeah.
If you talk about
I'm
macro,
sorry.
we don't know any more than anybody else.
Yeah, he summed it up. In terms of the businesses we buy, and when we buy stocks, we look at it as buying businesses, so they're very similar decisions. We try to know all, or as many as we can know, of the microeconomic factors. I like looking at the details of a business, whether we buy it or not. I mean, I just find it interesting to study the species, and that's the way you do study it. So I don't think there's any lack of interest in those factors or denying the importance of them. So am I getting at this question or not, Charlie?
Well, there hardly could be anything more important than the microeconomics. Yeah. That is business. Business and microeconomics are sort of the same term.
I guess
economics is what we do, and macroeconomics is what we put up with.
Yeah. The anchoring effect, I mean, how do you deal with that as well?
Well, we're not anchored with what we're ignoring.
I see.
But Charlie and I are the kind that literally find it interesting in every business. We like to look at micro factors. When we buy a See's Candy in 1972, you know, there may have been 140 shops or something. We'll look at numbers on each one, and we'll watch them over time, and we'll see how third-year shops behave in the second year. And we really like understanding businesses. It's interesting to us, and some of the information is very useful, and some of it may look like it's not helpful. But who knows when some little fact stored in the back of your mind pops up and really does make a difference. So we're fortunate in that we're doing what we love doing it. I mean, we love doing this like other people like watching baseball games, and which I like to do too. But just the very act, every pitch is interesting, and every movement, you know, whether the guy's, you know, a double steal is interesting or whatever it may be, and so that's what our activity is really devoted to, and we talk about that sort of thing.
And we try and avoid the worst anchoring effect, which is always your previous conclusion. We really try and destroy our previous ideas.
Charlie says that if you disagree with somebody, you ought to be able to state their case better than they can.
Absolutely.
And at that point, you've earned the right to disagree with them.
Otherwise, you should keep quiet. It would do wonders for our politics if everybody followed my system.